So if we open up our file list, we can see that our next field, we're going to work with shortcode. We'll be skipping posted and that'll be done shortly, but for now, we'll just double click on shortcode. Shortcode, we'll be having our usual using statements. So we'll have clip air, serialize, deserialize, and from stir from the standard library. We'll create our shortcode structure. And the shortcode is just going to be the code that's at the end of the URL when the user tries to access a clip. We're just going to wrap a string. We're going to need to derive debug, clone, deserialize, serialize. And we'll also use from. That'll be from derive more. So we'll use that as well. There's no real restrictions on generating shortcodes. So the from macro will automatically implement from to go from a string into a shortcode. So we don't need to write that manually because we're not going to have any validations on shortcodes. And we don't need any validations because the database is just going to search for the shortcode. And if it's not found, then we'll just return a not found error to the user. So we'll create an implementation block for our shortcode. We'll have our public function new. It's going to return a self. So we don't need a result in this case. It's always just going to return self. To generate shortcodes, we're going to need access to a random number generator. So if we open up our cargo.toml file on the left, we can add the rand crate in order to generate random numbers. We'll be using version 0.8 for this project. So we can set the version to 0.8. Once that's done, you can just close your cargo.toml file. We'll then use the rand prelude. And so the rand prelude is going to import the types and traits that are needed to work with random number generators and to pull out information from different arrays and things like that. I'm then going to create an array that has the allowed characters that are going to be in the shortcode. So these will actually be present in the URL, sort of like on YouTube, we have the letters and numbers that are after the video. That's the same concept here. I'm going to make mine simple. I'm just going to have A, B, C, D, and 1, 2, 3, 4. These are all characters, so you'll need to enclose them within single quotes. The next thing we'll need to do is create a random number generator, and it will need to be mutable. So we'll use a thread RNG, and that's just a typical random number generator that's specific to one thread. We also want to create a string for the shortcode, and we're going to use the with capacity function on the string. And I'm going to have my shortcodes be 10 characters long. So what the with capacity function does is it generates a string, and the maximum number of characters that we can have is 10. The reason I'm doing this instead of just creating a new string by itself is because we know how many characters we want in the string, and this is more efficient since it allocates enough memory for that 10. Otherwise, what may happen is we may allocate more memory as we're working with this string, which will cause the program to slow down. Now, all we need to do is pull out some of these characters from the array and put them into our shortcode to generate the shortcode. I'm going to do this with a for loop. So we'll use for underscore in, and we'll just have a range 0 through 10. With the ranges, we have 2 dots here. So that's an exclusive range. So 10 won't be included. And what this will do is it will iterate 10 times, and that way we can have 10 characters in our shortcode. We're using an underscore just to ignore the value because we don't actually care about the value. We just want to iterate 10 times. So we're going to take the shortcode, and we're going to push some characters onto the shortcode. The shortcode is a string, so we can use push to push characters. We're then going to access the allowed characters array, and we're going to use the .choose function provided by the rand crate. Choose will just choose a random character out of the array. We need to supply the RNG, which is the random number generator. I'm going to use expect. So this normally shouldn't fail, but if it does, we just want to crash immediately. So we'll have the error message, sampling array should have values. And this would be a programming error if this were to occur. And the reason for that is this choose function will always work as long as there's something to choose within this array. So if we have an empty array with nothing in it, then what'll happen is we'll get this expect message which crashes, and our program will not be able to continue. Once we have that in, we can then just return the structure with our shortcode. Since our inner type is a string, we're also going to have a function to get the string as a stir. So we'll just have as stir, and then we'll return a borrowed stir. We'll just access the inner type and call as stir on that. And we'll also do an into inner. And that will just extract the inner type, which is a string. And again, we're going to be using that frequently to convert into database types. We'll also want to implement default. For this default implementation, we can just call new without any parameters, and we'll just get a new shortcode. We're going to be using the shortcode frequently within the web portion of this project, so we're going to make some from implementations. That way we can convert from strings into the shortcode type more easily. The first implementation that we're going to be doing is we're going to implement from a shortcode into a string. This way we can just easily get a string out of a shortcode. So we'll just access the inner type for that one. And we'll also go from a borrowed stir into a shortcode. So if we do borrowed stir, we'll turn it into a shortcode by having the new function. We'll use shortcode, and then we'll just turn that into an owned string. And now we'll get a new shortcode from a borrowed stir. So a lot of times we'll have stirs coming from a web request, from a URL, for example, and we just want to get a shortcode out of it really easily. And we can just use .into to convert it automatically without having to type this every time. And just for completeness, we'll implement the from stir trait for our shortcode as well. We'll set our error type to be a clip error. In our function body, we're utilizing the from implementation that we implemented up here to convert from this borrowed stir into a shortcode. Normally, we would only need a from stir implementation, and we wouldn't need this one here, because they're both just working with borrowed stirs, as we can see. However, our particular type always succeeds, so we can always get one back with this from implementation. However, this from implementation returns a result. We're always going to have it to be okay. And this is actually just done for completeness, and it will be utilized later when we go to make the API. That'll be it for our shortcode field. Now we can move on to the next field.